liberty, and justice for all.
Mrs. Wise. Here. Mr. Irwin. Here. Mrs. Killian. Here. Mrs. Lohr. Present. Ms. Lauer. Present. Dr. Powers. Present. Ms. Scott. Here.
Our vision and mission statement. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Well, I just wanted to say it's great to see everyone's faces and smiles. I know it feels a little awkward to be able to do that, but it is nice to put a full face with people. First item on our agenda is our public access counselor advisory opinion, Mr. Jonathan Mays.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, like you said, it's the first time I haven't had to take something off to speak in a while. As the board members saw, and as many in the public saw, the board received on this past Wednesday a decision, an advisory opinion from the Public Access Counselor's Office with regards to a complaint flowing from the Consolidation Committee for the Meadows Elementary and other elementary school processes. And as the advisory opinion states, it represents a shift in the office's thinking on this matter, so we welcome this new guidance from the office. The public access counselor plays an important role, as even though it's not a legally binding decision, it's a decision that school boards and public entities around the state respect and follow and seek to adhere to. And so the public access counselor plays an important role in that regard in giving advice that school boards often follow. And here, this is some new guidance, and also importantly signaled that there would, because of this change, there would be a new public access counselor handbook. And so the handbook is also a very important document that council rely upon, that school boards, that other public entities rely upon in terms of being compliant with not only the open door law, but also the Access to Public Records Act. And so we look forward to receiving that updated handbook, incorporating hopefully this new guidance, and then incorporating that in future practices for the school corporation. And so that decision was it's final from that office. It's not an appealable decision, and so we now have that for our consumption and benefit going forward. And I'd like to open at this time for questions from board members if you have any.
So we do not have this updated handbook yet?
That's correct. Yeah, there's been since Wednesday no updated handbook, and it's not clear what kind of timeline that would be in terms of it being finalized.
Okay. But I understand it's not a new public access counselor. That he's been head of the public access council for many years.
Yes, I think since 2013 or 2014, I think is when Public Access Counselor Luke Britt, the current Public Access Counselor, took office.
And when was the last update of the handbook?
2017.
What would be a catalyst to update the handbook?
A change in guidance, a change in statute, new areas for new decisions from courts. So those are the type of things that typically cause the handbook to be updated.
So in the opinion, it said that recently, I don't have the wording in front of me, but there was a more narrow opinion, or narrowing of interpretation of the law. So was that him saying that he is more narrowly interpreting it now, and that's going to trigger a update in the handbook? Was that your interpretation of that, or?
Yeah, and he recognized somewhat of a disagreement with prior public access counselors and their opinions and interpretation of the law. It also is inconsistent with some of his early decisions in that office, in that role. And some of those decisions that you're talking about came after the committee had even been formed or even finished its work.
But could his response be based on the answer that you gave us regarding what could be a catalyst for change? Could he say the more narrowing of my decision, could that be based on the court cases, the changing codes? Like when I asked you what a catalyst would be to update a handbook, could that be the reason why he stated it that way?
No, there's no court opinions that have changed that, and that statutory provision has not changed. So it would be his interpretation of the law. Again, it is something to be respected. It's not legally binding. Courts, for example, if there's litigation in the Court of Appeals or Indiana Supreme Court, analyze decisions, they don't defer to the public access counselor's legal analysis in any way. But again, it should be respected by school boards and public entities around the state.
So this is his stated opinion, but as of yet, it is not written in a handbook that has been accessible to school corporations.
That's true. The opinions, though, should have that same respect, but that guidance, what we're looking for in that handbook would be that guidance as to how it would be applied in other situations, and that's the help that handbook has provided, because we have here the analysis in this situation. Our minds can wander with hypotheticals in a lot of different directions, and that's where the handbook can really be helpful.
So with this opinion, in regards to which I'm sure our audience is here to listen to, is do we have to reconsider the Meadows decision due to this new opinion?
No, he doesn't say that anywhere in the decision, and that's not legally required because of the decision.
You had mentioned to us that you reached out for further clarification, and you asked about executive session, things like that. Could you explain what his response to your question, and kind of go over that about the executive session and how that applies to this situation?
Yeah, and this was stemming from a conversation that we had with Councilor Britt and the representative from the Hoosier Press Association and myself 2 years ago on the application of, in the open door law, there's an exception to the public meetings for school consolidation. And we were asking for clarification on that. And hours after issuing this decision on Wednesday, he confirmed to me that that same provision allowing executive sessions for school consolidation would also apply to committee meetings as well.
Jonathan, I'm looking at the words public access counselor. When you said this is an appointed position, is this by the governor? Act is counseling us that we did something wrong. When you say open door law, the word law, I think most people think that you either have a law or you break the law. So when you say there's no legal recourse, would any of these findings ever be part of something that would make its way to a court?
I mean, it's hard to answer that question. Short of it is, there can't be any legal action that voids the Meadows decision at this point. Maybe that answers the question that you're trying to ask. But no, there's legal recourse to void the Meadows decision is expired under the open door law. That opportunity is passed.
Even though he just made this public, just gave us access, so to speak, to this decision, because the public would have not known what his opinion was going to be until he gave it.
Yeah, even though we just got his decision now, that's correct. It's still the same result.
I think, in reading the decision, my frustration as a fairly new board member, having sat through multiple trainings from our state school board association and working really diligently to be conscientious about that all the time, and then to read that and have all of that training kind of turned on its head, how on earth would we have been able to interpret that retroactively? I know that the answer is it's impossible, but I mean, I read this and it's very frustrating because, you know, you do due diligence and you work through that and you adhere to what the law says, and then someone says, oh, but you were wrong, but I'm not going to tell you until, you know, far after the fact. So what, if anything, could we have done to have satisfied this person?
Yeah, and so if you would have taken this knowledge and gone back 2 years, again, based on his guidance, hours after issuing this decision, essentially the process would be the same. There would just be executive session notices when the committee was meeting. So nothing else procedurally would change. And I understand your frustration. I think the counselor, public access counselor, is recognizing this shift. I mean, it explicitly acknowledges it and recognizes the need to update the handbook, because the handbook that oftentimes School Boards Association and others rely upon, in understanding the public access counselor's guidance, seems now to be outdated and in need of updating. And so it is a frustration point. I guess, you know, maybe a better way would be to roll out a new handbook and then announce the shift, but that shift occurred in this manner instead of that other way.
Has he given any indication of when that handbook is forthcoming?
No, he hasn't.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, request to rescind the vote of the closure of Meadows Elementary School. Mrs. Joni Wise, board member.
At our board meeting on February the 7th, I stated at our next meeting, I would ask for a vote to rescind the decision to consolidate and repurpose Meadows Elementary. The actions leading up to January 10th vote have caused the public to distrust our school corporation at this time, especially when we're asking the community to support a $260 million referendum to modernize our high schools. The public's trust is absolutely essential to a successful successful referendum. And if we can afford to ask $250 million of new taxes from this community, then we can afford to take time and expense to get a second opinion on the belt tightening we all know is necessary. I brought it to everyone's attention at our board meeting on February 7th that reading the Ready grant was startling to me, that we would be giving away or donating in kind almost 40 acres of land so that about 100 houses at $220,000 apiece could be built on them. It was startling to me, and I don't know if that was something the community was familiar with, out of the 270-page document that it was. I think that we owe it to this community to look at obtaining a second opinion when facing our financial difficulties. And I think that we should reconsider the Meadows Elementary School not being closed. So therefore, I'm going to make the motion that the decision to close Meadows Elementary School be rescinded.
I second.
We have a motion to reconsider and rescind the vote of the closure of Meadows Elementary School by Mrs. Wise and a second by Ms. Scott. We are now open for discussion among the board.
Could I ask you what you mean by a second opinion? Could you
Really?
elaborate, please?
Absolutely. You know, we did our plan to, as part of our strategic plan, different ways that we knew that we could do spending cuts. And we did this in 2009. But is there any other way that we can be doing this? Is there any other way we could be tightening our belt? Just like when the city council asked, when they were in the city was in such dire consequences, they hired an outside financial consultant and they didn't get a pushback from the mayor. Or the county commissioners, when they faced significant scrutiny over the difficult decision of properly sizing a new jail, they hired an independent consultant. So is this our only choice? Things on this one piece of paper, or can we have somebody from the outside look at it and say, I think it can be done another way? I mean, I looked at Rick Long was up here in January asking us for approval to pave a parking lot at Deming Deming Early Childhood Center, because they had gone from 30 employees to 70 employees. We went from a principal to a directive. I mean, we're talking about right sizing. Let's look at, is there another option that an outside professional firm can look at and say, they may confirm and say, that's the only thing, we gotta close elementary, sell off property. I just think that that's something we need, or give away the property, but I think it's something that we should consider as a board. It's under a lot of scrutiny. We're asking a lot from the community to trust us.
I have a question about what you suggest, that the property was included in our decision to close elementary, the school, because that was clearly stated that the property has no bearing on our motion or decision to repurpose Meadows Elementary School. There's no, it was specifically stated that the property was not part of that decision. So I don't understand why you're suggesting that it is.
Because I saw it with my own eyes in the Ready grant. So we can play with words and say, oh, that we were only closing the elementary school, and we have no consideration at this time for the property, even though it's laid out exactly how many houses, how much they'll cost, how we'll go about it sequentially. So do we really think people are going to buy that?
Well, it's a whole
No.
We haven't even broached that conversation yet. I mean, there's no, just like.
We need to have decorum, please. We are adults and we need to respect those that are speaking, please. Thank you.
It's just like if you make a plan or if you have an idea, then you throw out that idea, but it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. I mean, we as a board have considered lots of different ideas, and they have never, doing more due diligence, we decided it's not going to, be in our favor that we wanna do that, or other alternatives come up. It's like everybody here does with their own household plans or their future plans. They may have something specific planned for the next 5 years, and then a parent becomes ill, and it changes everything they have planned. And that's exactly, would be the same situation with this property. But in the Ready Grant, we had asked for a tremendous amount of different items that were in that Ready Grant. And, this, you know, we did not get all of the Ready Grant. And, this certainly was not part of it that went through. So I'm still confused as to why there's a connection with what the motion was and what was voted upon with approval, because it does not include anything about the property at all. Nothing.
And keeping school open, we could still have done something with the property or started an investigation of it, school being open or not being open. So, when you write a grant proposal, especially at this size, you propose a lot of things that still have multiple levels of approval. Just like all the grants that are brought before us, they have been written before, sent to the grant funding agencies before we actually approve.
Right,
So we're not reading those in advance.
And I write grants, I understand that, but I also have a board I answer to, and I couldn't imagine making that type of commitment in a grant without even running it past my board's ears. This is what I'm contemplating doing. That's a big ask, to have just taken it upon somebody's self to say, okay, I'm gonna give away land in almost 40 acres, in an in-kind donation to private builders.
But knowing that it had not been approved, it was going to have to go to board for approval. But that the Ready Grant was available to the community. We were aware that was being placed in there as a possibility along with the Fight Center. That portion was 2 pages out of the whole piece. Broad descriptive, not super.
Over 270 pages.
And we had heard about it before. It was one of a
Essential
handful of,
Workers Village, yes.
it was one of a handful of ideas that have been proposed and presented to the board multiple times, not in any kind of official capacity, just as here's an idea of what could be.
Well, and on October 24th, Dr. Hayworth had provided us a copy of the Ready Grant, so I'm confused why this wasn't brought up prior to February 7th.
Because we shouldn't be micromanaging everything Dr. Hayworth does. We have to trust that we're not making a vote for someone to get a raise and find out it's a $40,000 raise. So to go back and read.
Again,
It should be,
decorum.
we should trust what's being put in front of us. And it should have been put in the language that, please, not just click on this link. This is the link that where we're going to do the Essential Workers Village, and that we have committed to donate almost 40 acres of land to private builders.
That was in so many public communications. It was highly publicized. A lot of people, I mean, it was out there for everyone to see. It was hardly something being seen by us.
Where was it publicized that we were going to do the land in time? Out of curiosity, where did you see it published?
I'm referring to the concept and the Ready Grants communication, the video that was put out for the community to see.
It had on there that we were going to build an Essential Workers Village at Meadows. Is that what you're saying?
There are many concepts in there, but there are
Yes.
concepts that have yet to be approved, zoned.
Yes or no? Was it in there that we would be giving specifically? Was it, because we were saying how did this sneak, this didn't sneak up. So was it specifically cited in all these things that you're talking about, what our part of the plan was going to be, which was to donate the land?
I think the specifics, the point of this is the specifics hadn't been approved by the board. So we hadn't had the discussion. I'm saying I saw the videos and the public stuff that was put out. The Ready Grant was talked about in the community.
I know the Ready Grant, I know this, I know that it was readily talked about, but to my point, did you specifically see in all this information that was put out that this was about this commitment with the land? Yes or no?
No, because we haven't specifically talked about it now.
It's
It was down to a
specifically in
specific
writing.
recommendation,
It's specifically in writing.
but it was
As
a
a
concept
concept
proposal.
proposal.
Well, what would happen had we got the grant though?
Yeah.
Why are we proposing this? And then we would say, oh, well, we just proposed it.
And I think we have an entirely separate legal process that we'd be starting.
Well,
Totally separate.
But it is deceptive to the public and to the board. I
We
feel,
talked about it
I
in so
feel
many public
so many
meetings,
times.
community meetings.
we did
and
not
things.
say we are going to specifically make Meadows Field a subdivision.
No, and we
Because
are
it
not,
was a concept
we
as
still don't
part
know
of
that that's a
hundreds of other
possibility.
All
concepts.
of it, everything is a concept until you.
We also discussed with Meadows, with the building, that we would bring in the NEET experience for a rotation of 9 months, as well as junior achievement for 9 months, as well as renting out the buildings to homeschooling communities to use, that we would have art and music provided. These were all concepts to use with the building as well, but there was no commitment made at that time. They were still concepts, just as what we could do for a building trades program with that land. But again, to me, they are still concepts, and our due diligence as a board to put trust into our administration, that they are making plans for however the board may vote, yes or no, concerning our consolidations. But that is their job to plan for our community either way. So I commend the planning, that there was no cart before the horse, that it was a plan, just like I would do, just like mentioned, I've been in that situation with sick parents. My life changed because of that. And so, but regardless of how the board would vote, our administration has to make plans. So I don't see that part
The
before the
$70
horse.
million request is granted to the 5 counties involved to say you will receive 20 million. A whole bunch of those plans and concepts were going to be scrapped. So there were more plans and concepts in there than there were even possible from the Ready Grant, by tens of millions. And if we had received it, it still would have been less. And any of that final, what would most benefit the entire group of the Wabash Valley that put together the Ready Grant would have been decided. And there were several housing options in there that all might have been scrapped. There might have been a thing out the airport that would have been scrapped. It is so far down the line as to where we would end up with money if we ended up with any. So that it was a broad concept of the things we could do if the state wanted to provide us these dollars.
Well, I think it's naive of any of us in this room to compare what we would do with the building, what programs we would bring into it, in comparison to a 40-acre field in a very nice area. We are kidding ourselves collectively if we think that these things are not planned. We may not sit and discuss them because we do not collaborate as a board. I think a lot of this could have been avoided if we did have sessions where we specifically talked about what we were going to do with the school. I think a lot of the community seems to be shocked by the fact that Lost Creek has 700 children in it, and we want to send 39 more. But this is a multi-layer thing. We did not spend enough time on this. That's the reason there's so much upheaval with our
So
community.
on the school discussion or on the field discussion, because those are separate. Because the
I do
school
not
is
see
separate.
them.
Not separate,
I do
Susan.
not
They're not
see how we
separate.
keep
Nobody
them
falls for
separate.
that, it's not separate.
Mr. Irwin, could you
That's a
speak to your
joke to
motion?
say they're separate.
I don't know about interpretation, I can only speak to intent. And when I seconded the motion at the last meeting, I made it clear that I still had questions about the field because of things that were brought to us by the community. And I made it clear that in seconding that motion, I was not voting on anything to do with the field because I still had questions. I can't speak to interpretation, I can only speak to intent.
And those of us who voted that night understood that very clearly and were supporting it because of that separation.
So does anybody think that there won't be a big change in that field?
When I look at
You
my
all think
crystal
that?
ball, I see 100 houses gonna be built.
I
The
do
rest of
not
this is
see
just
that.
all,
Madam President, I'd like to call the question. It's on the floor.
Does that need a second?
Yes.
I second that.
We have a request to rescind the vote of the closure of Meadows Elementary School by Board Member Wise with a second by Board Member Scott. Dr. Goller, will you take roll, please?
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
No.
Mrs. Killian?
No.
Mrs. Lohr?
No.
Ms. Lauer?
No.
Dr. Powers?
No.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
We will now move to our consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion for approval for our consent agenda by Board Member Irwin with a second by Dr. Powers. Dr. Goller.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
February accounts payable docket, our Finance Committee.
I'd like to move approval of the February accounts payable docket.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mrs. Lohr to approve accounts payable with a second by Mrs. Wise.
Was there anything from the finance committee?
We reviewed everything, and there were a couple of questions regarding to just that the way we pay our legal fees and legal services, and Mrs. Wilson answered those quickly and effectively, and I think that was the only ones we saw. Is that correct? Yeah. So,
Dr. Goller.
Mrs. Wise?
aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Donations, Superintendent Hayward.
Approval is requested to accept the following donations: VCSC Elementary School's Physical Education Program donations. Don't believe we have a dollar amount attached to them.
Move to approve with gratitude.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve by Mrs. Lauer with a second by Ms. Wise. Dr. Goller.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
New business, personnel report, professional leave request, Mr. Michael Cox.
President Killian, Superintendent Hayward. Excuse me. Members of the board, administration seeks approval of the personnel professional leave report as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the personnel report and professional leave requests.
I will second that, and I think the coughing and stuttering are starting to become a little contagious here.
Call me a liar.
We have a motion to approve by Ms. Wise and a second by Mr. Irwin. Dr. Goller.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Our school calendar amendment, Dr. Tom Bellatevich. That's a great entrance.
Good evening, Superintendent Hayward, President Killian, members of the school boards and trustees. Tonight, I'd like to bring forth an amendment to our school calendar. Starting spring 2022, Indiana juniors will take College Board SAT, which serves as Indiana's accountability assessment for mathematics and English language arts in high school. State law requires high school students to participate in a nationally recognized college entrance exam for accountability purposes. This year, the Vigo County School Corporation will have an e-learning day on March 3rd, 2022. Our principals and counselors requested an e-learning day for our high schools, given the nature and requirements of the SAT and its high stakes testing environment. Our schools do not have spaces large enough to properly administer the SAT. Research into other school districts across the state revealed that many others will also have an e-learning day for the SAT administration. To best serve our students, the VCSC will conduct the SAT administration for juniors on site at the high schools, while students in grade 9, 10, and 12 will engage in e-learning at home. All staff will report to the school building and work either with the SAT administration or with the students on e-learning. At this time, we are requesting approval for a calendar amendment to continue the practice of e-learning at our high school for the SAT administration in subsequent years. At this time, I'll entertain any questions.
So I have one question. Because this is the high school assessment now, will the scores of that appear on the high school transcript?
I phoned a friend there to Dr. Biller. Yes.
So theoretically, an institution that may be test optional, for example, most of our higher ed institutions in Indiana, but use SAT scores for placement and for scholarships, a student should not, look at admissions counselors here, should not necessarily require the student to pay for and send their college board test results to those institutions because receipt of the final high school transcript will have those, theoretically.
Theoretically speaking, yeah.
Will those appear, will those appear on the transcript prior to graduation? So if I'm taking my junior year and the scores come out this summer of my junior year, would I theoretically have those on my transcript such that when I apply for university, such as ISU, in the fall, they would be on there for the institution to use?
Yes, they would. And we've checked on this simply because now the SAT is becoming an accountability test.
Right.
And so that's why they're going to be placed on the transcript. Prior, they were not accountability, so they didn't have to be put on there, but these do. That is wonderful.
And will there be opportunities for students who are not pleased with their first test results to retake them? Would it be on their own dime or their own time?
Yes.
Both of those. And they would still take the best scores that would replace a lower score if they succeeded in upping that?
Usually that depends on the college. Many colleges do take the best score, but this 11th grade test score will still be on the transcript.
Okay, all right. Another point that you brought up in an earlier conversation is it's just not the fact that we needed space for the students, for the juniors to take this testing, but also the fact that without the bells ringing at the end of what would have been the passing periods, which would have been very distracting to them. So
That's correct. The
yeah.
College Board has very strict guidelines for administering their exam.
Right. So this e-learning day for the rest of the high school students is the best way to proceed with this.
Thank you.
I move approval of the calendar amendment as presented by Dr. King.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Dr. Goldberg.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Next, we have the Build, Grow, Learn Stabilization Grant from Dr. Karen Goldberg.
Good evening, President Killian, Superintendent Hayworth, and members of the board. Tonight we bring you the Build, Grow, Learn Stabilization Grant. This is a grant from the Indiana Department of Education. It is the second such grant that we have received to help the district look at our needs due to COVID-19. The grants are non-competitive. They provide short-term funding, again, to help us look at increased costs that we have faced and challenges brought on by COVID-19. We have 8 schools that will be able to benefit from this funding. Denning Early Learning Center, Farrington Grove Elementary, Fuquay Elementary, Sugar Grove, Terrytown Elementary, the Little Racers at Riley Elementary, Little Braves in Washington High School, and the Vikes and Tykes. And so these schools could benefit from the funding. The state provides very specific guidance on what this funding can be used for. And you see that in your board packet. Health and safety, personnel costs, facility and maintenance or improvement, COVID-19 safety, business continuation, and mental health supports. Dr. Fenton and Mrs. Bennett will assisting with the administration of this grant. And these funds are very much in alignment with many of our Title I schools. So we ask for your approval this evening.
Move approval of the grant as presented.
Second that.
I do have a question. Just confirming, this is generated from the state of Indiana, or is this more ESSER funding that the state is administering?
I believe I can check with Donna, it's extra funding that's coming down to the state.
Pass through, I believe.
Okay, yeah, so it's federal.
We have a motion by Mrs. Moore with a second by Mrs. Lauer. Dr. Fuller.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Next is our call for citizen comments, and I have a total of 10 here that have signed up, so you will have 5 minutes at the podium. I would like to call Brian Payne. His subject is ODL.
Oh, we're ready to comment. All right.
I would just like to remind the audience when you are up speaking that you direct your comments to the board members, and I'd ask for decorum of our audience. Thank you.
And can I please ask what my time limit is? Or not? It is 5 minutes. All right.
30-second warning.
Thank you. Well, we'll just have to go with order. I would like to address Mr. May's comments first. Wow.
No,
Sorry, are we not in
address
public
Mr.
comment?
Mays or just the board?
Just the board. Well,
You want to order what he said.
then I would like to address what he said to you, the board.
Yes.
There you go.
And I do take, I would like to provide further clarification. And before I even step in and do that, I want to say, I feel it's unreasonable that me as the public am now, after action has been taken, finally being granted the opportunity to address an agenda item. I understand you're not required to give us the opportunity to speak, but I do believe in fulfilling your fiduciary responsibilities, giving us that opportunity is important. But thank you for this, I better get moving. He referenced the handbook, and yes, that is guidance. But I would point you to the actual open door law itself. And on executive sessions, in section 6.1, it's actually very clear. We're all familiar with we're familiar with the 5 instances you can use it for, school consolidation being one of them. But it goes on to say, and it's pretty specific here, that if you're going to do it for any of those 5, that executive session, discussion of strategy is allowed. However, all such strategy discussions must be necessary for competitive and bargaining reasons. That's straight out of the open door law. You don't need to interpret that. I don't know quite why we're going to the handbook. So I would ask what necessary competitive or bargaining reasons were necessary for this school consolidation meeting to be behind closed doors. That would be one of my questions. He further went on, he addressed you and said that we're getting this all after the fact. Well, there I would further disagree. Law, and particularly the interpretation of law, changes over time. It is not set in stone. And the handbook is dated, in fact, 2017 to be exact. Kind of like cell phones. I can't imagine what my 2017 one was, but I wouldn't want to be using the user manual to address this one with my 2017 phone. And my point here is the PAC's way for dealing with those changes is through the issuing of comments, opinions. You got one, we've actually provided 2 for you, but in his formal opinion, he referenced recent ones, but they weren't all that recent. There was one filed in March 31st, 2021, would have been filed prior to the second round of meetings on consolidation. And it's highly applicable. In fact, it was a task force designated by a superintendent, and once again, similar to our outcome, the PAC said, hey, this isn't right. So I think I agree with the PAC when he said Vigo County School Corporation should have known. Because the reason you have legal counsel and pay several $100s an hour to get it is to get the latest, up-to-date, evolving understanding of the interpretation of the law. And having looked through the candidate's handbook for school board, they spend more time in here talking about open door law than just about anything else. I can think of nothing more important to this institution, the board, than an accurate and current understanding of open door law. And I will leave it at that for that, but I do want to talk briefly on the Essential Workers Village and grants in general, because here I really take exception. As someone who has written grants and asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding, if you are putting in a grant that you are going to donate something in kind, you better be prepared to donate it, or you will never be seeing or talking to that granting agency again. So while I agree there were concepts, when you're saying I'm going to do something in kind and donate, and it's a match, 30 seconds, thank you. Then I will just point to two areas in the Ready Grant where it specifically says, while the Essential Worker Village provides the exploration of career pathways for students, it will be developing a learning lab. That's page 1. It's specifically referencing a learning lab, which is exactly what we want to repurpose Meadows. And further, is in consideration for this program, creating a learning lab, and that's time. I would just say, please, give us a chance to talk before the agenda item next time. Thank you.
I have Margaret, is it Herdlick? I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Yeah, that's me. I'm speaking on something completely unrelated to the issue at hand. So respectfully, could I speak maybe at the end if there are others
That's
speaking
fine.
on this issue?
Sure, thank you. Angela Tanner on Meadows and Diversity.
I'll let my fellow community members continue to present you with the hard facts that pointedly prove what despicable behavior is going on with this administration. I've grown tired of asking for budget numbers that don't seem to exist. I will take this opportunity to point out that what I see from my perspective as a Mexican-American woman in this community, what I see before me is a very white administration that pulls in 6 figures a year making decisions that are attacking a very specific socio-economic part of this community. We have all heard the rumors that point to Fuquay as next, and Sarah Scott after that if needed. I'm pointing this out because it follows a long-standing pattern followed by this school corporation that I am just tired of seeing. Let's start out with the combined 25 schools in this district. You have 1 black principal. Imagine that, it's one of the schools being rumored to be on the chopping block next. And how about of all the high school athletic teams out of the 3 high schools in this community, how many minorities serve as a head coach? 1. I also know it's not from lack of more than qualified applicants applying. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been an extremely well-qualified black coach who submitted 5 letters of recommendation, 2 from college coaches, and never even received an interview. This is a continuing example of the type of behavior this administration feels entitled to get away with, and 5 of you sitting before us continue to rubber stamp. The school consolidation committees whose applicants were handpicked by Dr. Fenton and shrouded in secrecy. Should we take a guess on what its demographics consisted of? I'd sure like to know how many minority groups were given representation on that committee. Considering the high poverty rates of the schools targeted, how many parents whose children are on free or reduced lunch were part of that decision? Any? I still don't know who the committee was, so I can't answer that question. You should probably go look for the answers. I don't see my voice enacting any kind of change today, considering your continued support of this administration's recommendation. But I do hope it makes you stop and think before you place your next rubber stamp on another one of their recommendations.
Marcia Ogle, speaking on Meadows.
I kind of feel like I'm going to be talking about a dead horse in the room that we're kicking, but we'll just keep on a little bit longer. I love that this topic has been brought back for further discussion. Thank you so much. You wear your name well, wise, and thank you. I wasn't part of the initial discussions. I have no idea what all went on in advance, and I'm sure that you guys worked really hard. But there's a lot of intelligence in this room. Let's use it. The listening session at Meadows was more of a hearing session. You heard, but you didn't listen. 50 people came to the pulpit and talked. Only one person was against. One was for, everybody else was for keeping the school open. 49 people said, please leave my school open. Okay? Everyone from little kids to qualified, highly educated people in this community came to the pulpit and gave passionate speeches and were ignored. Seems weird to me. I'm not sure why it's a bad thing to periodically have a school that has a low population. Small class sizes in this environment seem pretty good to me. The discipline that's in a school these days is next to nil. Teachers cannot teach, students cannot learn because there's no discipline in the home, therefore there's little discipline in the school. And we can't change parents, but we can change teachers and we can change schools. So why is it bad that there's a small population in a small school? Why do we have to crowd more kids and go bigger school? That makes sense. I have tried to teach in a classroom of 35 kids or 20, 29 kids can't get any education through because you got so many kids misbehaving. They don't know things, so they misbehave, so you can't teach. I now teach in a small environment, and I get to reach them all. What's wrong with that? It's kind of what we're here for. I know that Meadows is a done deal, but it doesn't need to be. Open your minds, make a decision. Change your mind, I should say. Change your mind. You made valid points. These people made valid points. They've done some heavy-duty research. I don't see why we can't put our heads together and come up with a better plan. Doesn't make sense. And these homes, what a joke. I can't even start about that. What's wrong with leaving that field like it is? There's plenty of people that use it, turning it into a subdivision. We got plenty of other places in this town to build a subdivision. And again, people have said this already. They are connected. Let's not play like they're not. It's simple.
I have Dave Clinton on the Clear non-closure versus
Dave Clinton, thank you for this opportunity. I came here, this is the first time I've ever been to a school board meeting. I came here, I would say, as a blank sheet of paper. No biases, no prejudices. Really had no idea. But I do have biases and prejudices now. I'm very disappointed. I'm very upset with what I just witnessed. I've been in the corporate world for 40 years. I've attended board meetings monthly for 30 years. This is not the way to conduct a board meeting. You sat there, I'm sorry, I shouldn't point. You sat there and listened to this gobbledygook. I don't know if I can paraphrase very well, but he came up and said, we got some rules for you. No, they're not in writing yet. Oh, sorry, we don't know when they're going to be in writing. Well, by golly, you better pay attention to them. That's his fault. Your fault is you didn't pound the table and say no. This is Vigo County. We're the school board here. We run the school board here. He wants to come and talk to us with his rules. Come and talk to us. But don't you dare come to this school board and lay down these rules. We don't even know what they say. Oh, by the way, they're retroactive. Your fault is you stood and took it. That's your fault. Don't do that. I don't have any opinion on Meadows. I'm not qualified to give an opinion on Meadows. Schools closed. That's just a fact of life. What I'm upset about is what I just witnessed here. Is you all talked past each other. If this is an example of how the decision was made to close Meadows, shame on you. Ms. Wise spoke wisely. She is absolutely right. Until you get your act together and can talk to one another, you need to revisit this issue. You need to start over. Somebody said in this room, and I don't remember who, you're worried about losing the trust of the community. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, I came in here as a blank sheet of paper, and you've already lost my trust as I witnessed what was going on in this room. Take a vote again tonight to revisit Mrs. Wise's resolution. You need to, if you care. The other thing I expected when I came tonight is some portion of this meeting would be devoted to care and welfare and how the students are doing. Maybe that was expecting too much. Did I miss it?
Come on the work session nights.
Huh?
Come on the work session nights.
Thank you. Yeah. I was expecting and hoping, and I will do that. I care a lot about the children. That's one of my primary reasons for coming. So, thank you for that clarification. Well, I pounded the table enough. You gave me an opportunity to speak. I took it. I'm assuming I have it at the end of my time. So I'll relinquish my time back to the board.
I have Aaron Withers for Meadows.
So I had a whole thing I was gonna say, and I'm gonna narrow it really down. The last meeting that we had, my daughter Lillian came up with Natalie, her speech teacher. My daughter doesn't talk. She spoke to you through a device. You guys didn't hear anything she said. You, all of you are elected officials, except for him. You're all elected officials. You can be replaced. You guys are, do you even care about the kids? Because your first job should be advocating for them. And you do a terrible job at that. This is why my mother sent me to boarding school. Because Vigo County has always been corrupt. It remains to be that way. Doesn't seem like it's going to change any. Meadows has a playground with tape all around it that you guys have known about since May. Kids can't play on it. These little kids like my kids, I have 2 autistic kids in that school. The one thing they want to do is they want to go swing and they're going to want to go down the slides. Can't. Slides are too sharp. They might get cut. So they're just supposed to play in a yard, basically. Do you guys even care? You made some great points. Rosemarie has an open mind. I mean, I'm utterly disgusted with what's going on. In case anybody knows, you can take your kids to Hendricks County, you can take them to any other county. They've got openings, they'll take your kids. Get a better education. Get people that listen to you. Because whatever you guys are doing isn't working. And you know what? My mom died in August, and my mother always said that field was to be empty. Always. never to be sold. And now it's gonna just be another Terra Vista, Lincolnshire, Woodridge, whatever. Whatever you guys decide works in your best interest. You don't give, oh, the other thing. This is how I found out my kids are going to Davis Park. No teacher meeting, a postcard that you guys spent 53 cents on to send to me. See, have you seen it? Anybody seen this? Huh? Yes. What a nice way to know that you guys, even when, after you had brought up, I got this after you had brought up that you were gonna talk about it again. I wouldn't vote for any of you. Well, there's two of you that would. And I have a long history with Jackie. A very long history with Jackie. But the rest of you, I got no use for.
Wyoming Pruitt. And that is decision.
I gotta say, once again, guys, 5 of you disappointed me. Once again. Now, we try to teach our kids to do the right thing, no matter how it feels at the moment. It's tough. It can hurt. But we preach every day to do the right thing. They're not seeing that. We preach it. We're supposed to be showing them as well. Nobody other than Mrs. Wise and Mrs. Scott yet again thought about what is right. You guys got an opinion from your public access counselor saying that the law was broken, in their opinion. And it is public knowledge. 5 of you did not care enough to think about that. 5 of you said, well, we've made up our minds. Ignore it. Let's not make it right because we've already thought about this. We've already made our decision. Who cares how good of a point we had given to us? Who cares how these kids are going to feel? At this point, it's not even about the kids. It's about right and wrong. I can't. Oh my goodness. You're supposed to be adults. We're supposed to know what we're doing. 2 of you have thought and listened. Isn't that what we're taught to do? Listen to opposing views. Listen for the facts. Listen. And I know you're looking at your nails and you're writing down your notes, and I don't care. I listened to you guys. I grew up in Vigo County. I listened to the administrators. I listened. I got A's, B's, C's. I did it. I graduated with honors from Vigo County despite the corruption I saw. Not because anybody was a good example, and now you guys are showing another poor example. For my children. My children and my sister. You guys are horrible examples, except for 2. Because 2 of you actually took the time to think about what this decision would be. Think about what it actually meant. Thought about the actual consequences. I'm disgusted with you guys.
Jimmy Mueller. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Please no Meadows.
So I have a few things to address, kind of reiterating comments that have already been made, but just so you guys can see how widespread the concerns are. This is bigger than Meadows, okay? This isn't just about closing Meadows School. You have chosen to take action without consideration of community impact, even legal recourse. Thank you, Joni Wise, and thank you, Rosemary Scott, for actually doing your duty as a school board member representing the community. I greatly appreciate that. The rest of you should be ashamed of yourselves. You heard from the community. You heard information from a public access counselor. You all received a letter today from the attorney of the Teachers Union of Indiana State Teachers Association. You did not take any of that into account. You are turning a blind eye to the community, to legal recourse of your actions, and just following whatever the administration is trying to push through. I too received a postcard, right? I want you all to know that this is how the administration has chosen to inform parents of where their kids are going. Very nice postcard, very welcoming from the school that my students are apparently going to, but that's not how the administration should have informed parents. It's appalling to me that a formal letter was not sent telling parents of the process and the plan for their child's education. We get a welcome letter from the school that they're going to be going to. That's how we're informed. Sure, if this was sent over the summer, welcoming the students, I get it, but this should not have been the first notice. You're already quite aware of the lack of trust that you have from myself and many people in this community. I'm going to take the opportunity now. I have been given permission to read the letter that you have all received. This letter is sent from the attorney for the Indiana State Teachers Association. So I will continue my time reading this letter. Dear Superintendent Hayworth and school board members, I am the attorney for the Indiana State Teachers Association. I am contacting you to request that the school board cease and desist from taking any actions to consolidate and repurpose Meadows Elementary School, considering the recent advisory opinion from the Indiana Public Access Counselor. Responding to formal complaint number 22 FC4, alleging that the Butte County School Corporation violated the open door law, Mr. Luke Crick concluded, it is the opinion of this office that the Butte County School Corporation authorized an official committee to operate behind closed doors and take official action on public business outside of a public meeting contrary to the open door law. In support of the opinion that VCSC violated the ODL and supporting this cease and desist request, the PAC's advisory opinion noted the following about the committee formed under the direction of the Director of Elementary Education. VCSC concedes that the committee was formed for the specific purpose of addressing the closure of 2 elementary schools. This is public business by any legitimate and reasonable definition. By all accounts, the administration commissioned the committee to do a portion of the school corporation's work. VCSC hand-selected the committee roster, and the committee's purpose was clear and unequivocal: make recommendations as to school closures. We can find no alternative position other than that official, formal rostered groups specifically established by a public agency's administration for the purposes of taking official action on the agency's public business qualify as bodies subject to the open door law. The committee's deliberative process was shrouded in secrecy. By the time the recommendations were presented, the damage had already been done. It is reported on February 24th in the Tribune-Star, after the advisory opinion was issued, that the PAC has observed administrators across the state setting up committees to get around the ODL and avoid scrutiny. Therefore, as he notes in the advisory opinion, his office has issued several published opinions last year to clarify his office's interpretation of the ODL, in which the VCSC should have been aware. Under the direction of the Director of Elementary Education, this committee failed to use public meetings as a platform to demonstrate that their work was positively benefiting the public. The right people made up the committee and communicate that the committee was thoughtfully deliberating the issues at hand. VCSC's proposed remedy to simply provide notice of future meetings of the committee as it continues to meet in closed sessions is inadequate and does nothing to repair the damage done to the public's trust by the secrecy of the committee's deliberation. This damage must be reversed by preventing any consolidation or repurposing of Meadows Elementary School and repealing any previously adopted motions to do so. Sincerely, Eric M. Hilton.
That's your time.
Debbie Considine about Meadows closure.
would like to ask perhaps your permission. I have this going out and I had written down everything so that my speech would go smoothly, but there are a couple of issues that were brought up that I might lose my place, and I would appreciate your patience in case that happens. My name is Debbie Considine. I spoke before the board on January 10th, based on American to express my opinion that no schools in Harrison Township should be closed because those figures show that there would be an increase in students in the next few years. Now, I thought that maybe with the vote voted to close the school, I should just leave it alone. I said my piece, let life go on. And this is where I have to ad-lib a bit, because this was prior to, okay. I guess I'll ask a question rather than say this next paragraph. If you're not going to build schools on Meadows property, why are you going to put the building trades program in the building? That's my question. Now, thinking about the Essential Workers Village and what I still feel is connected with Meadows School and other conversations and exploration I did, I felt compelled to go on looking at other things concerning the school closures, because I wanted to actually find a reason for you, a legitimate reason why you're doing what you're doing. But as I explored, I keep finding more and more reasons, and I probably still will find more and more reasons why we shouldn't do this. Now I want to address Ms. Scott's concern about large school, and I'm going to address maybe a possible reason for that. School boundaries. Lost Creek, westernmost boundary, is on Maple and I believe 22nd Street. I need new glasses, I can't see the map that well. Now, a student living near that point is closer to Tarrytown, Wabash, Franklin, and even Meadows than Lost Creek. If Deming were still in elementary school, it would have been blocks away from the student's home. And it would be great for students to go to schools as close as possible to where they live, and not have to go to school that's not like five or six schools away from their closest school. And another article I read in trying to find a quest to see was an article on personnel changes in June 2020 related to West Vigo Elementary and Deming. According to a Tribune Star article, the principals at West Vigo Elementary and Deming at the end of the 2020 school year were transferred to other jobs, and both schools got interim principals for the 2021 school year. Funny, it was that those exact two schools were cut first, and the two interim principals went back to the schools where they previously had served. And the issue I'd like to end with this, and this is the issue I'd like to end with this evening. And I'd like to include something that Mrs. Tanner said in this, and if I stumble through it again, I'm sorry. There was a call for volunteers for the Elementary School Reorganization Committee, and that is an article that appeared in the June 22nd online edition. And there was a link to go to that form. Now you have to pay to see articles from the Tribune Star. And somebody who's low income is probably not going to pay for a Tribune Star subscription, and we've never seen this. Now the article said the committee would include 2 members from schools at near or less than 300. And there was a list of schools. And those were Davis Park, Deming, Fayette, Franklin, Meadows, Sugar Creek Consolidated, West Vigo Elementary. And I just thought, okay, I'm sorry. And I take it that a qualification was school, the only qualification was schools near or less than 300. But there are 4 other schools that would apply, that fall in that category. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics data for the 2021 school year, Sugar Creek Consolidated had the highest number of schools, highest number of students, 355 of the schools being considered closure. However, Wabash had 276, Fuquay had 320, Sugar Grove had 335,
Madam Chair, she can have the remainder of my time.
As I said,
We don't do that sharing of our.
Of course we can.
You didn't give her the 30-second warning.
there may be good reasons why those schools were exempt from consideration. But those criteria should be stated publicly. And quite frankly, I feel this is a good reason to rescind the vote to post Meadows.
Next, we have Josh Stonebreaker.
I'm good.
Thank you, sir. Margaret Burlett. She wants to discuss the NAACP essay contest.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to highlight the fact that a number of our high school students were honored this weekend, and I think that some of you may be aware of that, but I thought this event was important enough to get a little bit more public notice. On Saturday, there was a ceremony at the Vigo County Historical Museum to announce the winners of the EGI Racial Justice Essay Contest. This was an essay contest that was sponsored by the Greater Terre Haute NAACP at the local level, but it was sponsored at the national level by the Equal Justice Initiative, which is an amazing organization in Montgomery, Alabama. And they provided the writing prompts, and they were the primary judges of the contest, and they also provided the awards, basically. So this was open to all Vigo County High School students, and what I liked about the prompts, and one of my children did participate, what I liked about the prompts was that students picked an issue related to racial justice, but they didn't just give a personal response. They had to do real research. And so, for example, my son researched redlining and housing discrimination and racial covenants, housing covenants in Chicago over the years. And he learned so much from this. And other students researched issues around mass incarceration and voting rights and the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. And these are issues of real consequence. And these students became better learners and better citizens by researching these topics. And so I wanted to also add that the results of this contest were supposed to be announced in January, and January came and went, and I know my son was kind of wondering what was going on. Well, at the awards ceremony on Saturday, it was announced that the judges simply could not make a fast decision because the quality of the essays was so high. And in fact, they offered more awards because of that. $10,000 in awards were offered to local students, which I think is pretty amazing. I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Burbowski, who is my son's high school teacher and who asked her students to participate in this. I think it's amazing the way she encourages her students to wrestle with tough topics in the safe space of the classroom. And I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't comment on the larger context that exists right now in Indiana around some of these issues. Right now, the Indiana legislature appears poised to pass HB 1134, a law intended to take certain topics off the table, or at least frighten teachers into not discussing them. And a lot of these are issues around racial justice. And so I think we should commend these students, and I think we should commend teachers who are encouraging them to really learn and be their best. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for those comments. Next, information from Superintendent Hayward and board members.
Just one thing to report, we had planned on taking our leadership team from West Vigo, Terre North and Terre South for a day where they would be recognized by the general were unable to take our students there because of the student trips, but they were recognized for their attempts to raise 50,000 community service hours within our district, and they have achieved that feat, and we're trying to find a location that's suitable to recognize them for that. So.
I think this is a good comment. I have received a text following Mrs. Hurlett. Indiana lawmakers have killed HB 1134. So you might want to check your news stories on that. I thought that might be at least somewhat of a good news this evening. I would also like to take time, I was on Facebook and had seen our Sarah Scott Middle School students receive a rowing machine. And we'll be the only school in the state of Indiana that does have that. So that is a great asset to have for our students at Sarah Scott.
It opens the door for our crew, which is with Diego County, and that's a good experience. It's a good experience for the kids. I just like to comment too on the 50,000 hours. That was a great idea, and the resourcefulness and the originality of how those students went after those 50,000 hours of community service was commendable. I think they had fun. I think the community certainly benefited from that, and I would like to see that maybe continue.
Clarification, you said something just 30 seconds ago. The legislature just killed something.
House Bill 1134 that Mrs. Hurlett had made reference to.
Okay.
That is, we've had a lot of teachers and other local parents and concerned citizens go to the State House and help lobby against.
Okay.
You can look up that House Bill 1134. It was heard in the Senate and did not pass.
That would be against CRT and things of that like nature.
Yes. You're exactly right.
Okay. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's important for teachers for sure.
Thank you.
That is my opinion. I'm sorry. That's just my
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but when you just said a bill number, it didn't mean anything.
I'm sorry. I just thought it was a good reference after she spoke. Are there any other board member comments or committee reports?
I have comments. There aren't many people. You could go first. No? This meeting, as many of you probably tell, I tend to be a little passionate about the way I feel about things. Maybe because I'm a mom and I sent 5 kids to school and 5 kids to college, and I've been where you all have been. And I know you want the best for your babies. We all do. It's just, some of us look at this differently than others. But what I want to come out of this, really a bad thing, in my point of view, I want there to be a silver lining. And I want it to be that the community gets involved, that the community has the conversation. You know, we know we need to save money, but do we want to do that by having larger elementary schools? You know, form your own committees, form your own groups. You won't be subject to the open door law.
Maybe,
so
maybe not.
You won't be breaking that law, hopefully. The second thing is, it may not be somebody's legal opinion that the law was broken, but think about the state of Indiana, that we have such a thing called public access, that we have public access counselors, that we have a law called open door. It's all right there in the words. Did we give public access? Are we transparent? Do we have an open door? I don't think any of the public feels that way. I won't speak for my fellow board members, but I think you all know how they feel. So that's what we need to think about. Don't be discouraged. Don't walk away. Continue to fight for what's best for our town. It's just a conversation that has to go on all the time. Even if you don't have children in school. I mean, people often say, well, I don't have a dog in the hunt. Well, we in fact do, because we're all taxpayers. And when somebody from the state says, cease and desist, which is in the letter that she read from the Teachers Association of the state of Indiana, is calling this board out, saying cease and desist. This is very, very serious. You're talking about a 40-acre field. Mrs. Weiss pointed out eloquently so many arguments where we should cease and desist. I think I've typed emails to so many people that say, go back to the drawing board. It's just automatic. Go back to the drawing board. We definitely need to do that. I hope so much that there is some way we can keep Meadows open. And if not, I have a feeling that the next election, there are going to be new board members on here, and eventually, they are going to want the school reopened. Also, the timing of this closure could not have been any worse, because now, as we ask you for our trust for $260 million, we are taking your trust away by breaking the open door law, for not being humble and saying, we may have not known we were doing this, but it's obvious that we did. We're not being apologetic. So I think that has eroded trust. And I really worry about our community when a decision like this has been made, and it so much goes against what the people want. Not just the parents, but many, many citizens. If you go to the east side, you go to Meadows Shopping Center, you go there and you talk to the shopkeepers, as I have. Many of them are like, this was a bad decision. We're trying to open new business. They're enthusiastic about the growth and the thriving that they see on that end of town. We hear from people about the casino often. What will that look like when the casino opens in a couple years? 200 employees. Can we estimate how many of them may have elementary school children? And the proximity to Meadows, the proximity to Lost Creek, which we've already said has so many children. All of that should have been taken into consideration, and we should simply wait. And I thank you all so much for how much you care about our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
Before we leave, I just would like to state that the financial considerations that have gone through with all of us, the constant deliberation and back and forth and study and hard work of considering, what the committee did and their findings and speaking to them. It hasn't changed the fact that we have been on a deficit spending trajectory for a long time, and those things have to be dealt with. And to me, it would be a dereliction of duty and a violation of the public trust to avoid that. And so I just wanted to clarify why I feel compelled to support it.
You never visited our school.
You're buying flat rates for Dixie Beans?
Even meetings, we're spending more money tonight.
Please decorum, please.
No kidding.
So I just wanted to say that I felt like it would have been a dereliction of duty.
Yeah, we believe you too. Good luck getting the referendum.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. About $250 million.
The FBI coming, that wasn't enough, was it?
Good luck.